48A, 48A1. We're moving ahead. Hahalel, the Mishnah states, Hahalel v'Simcha Shmona. Morning, Adam. That the Hallel, we say the whole Hallel, and the mitzvah of Simcha, the mitzvah of rejoicing on the holiday of Sukkot, it applies for all 8 days. There's a mitzvah to eat meat from the korban shlamim, from the korban. That applies every day of the holiday of Sukkot. Just like today, we don't have the shlamim. We don't have that offering today. We have a mitzvah every day to rejoice on the holiday. Every day of Sukkot, there's a mitzvah to rejoice, whether having a nice bottle of wine, or not a bottle, maybe a cup of wine, or other things of Simcha. We have a mitzvah every day, including Chol Hamoed. And the Mishnah states that there's a mitzvah of Hallel, reciting the whole Hallel, and the mitzvah of Simcha, of rejoicing for 8 days. Ketzad, Malame Shechayiv Adam. Person is obligated, there's an obligation to say Hallel, Simcha, and to rejoice, and Kavod Yom Tov Acharon. This teaches us the fact that the Mishnah stated it's 8 days. So the chidush is that you have to go ahead and recite Hallel and have Simcha and Kavod and honor the last day, Hayotam Ha'achron Shelcha K'shayim Otachar. That even Shmini Atzeret, the chid, meaning we know the Torah says the idea of Simcha by the 7 days of Sukkot. But how do we know that even, it says V'samachta b'chaygecha. So we know there's a mitzvah of Simcha by Sukkot, but the chidush is that you even have the mitzvah of Simcha even on Shmini Atzeret, even on the 8th day of the holiday, and also there's an obligation of reciting the Hallel, and also the Gemara understands that part of Simcha is also kavod. You have to honor the day, whether you honor it with, showing, the greatness of the day. You honor it maybe by wearing some nice clothing. It's also part of Simcha. But that's what you need to do on on Shmini Atzeret. So it's interesting, the language of the Mishnah, happiness and kavod, something that's honorable. How do you honor the day? Maybe we honor it sometimes. One of the things we do is we light candles, right? We have a mitzvah. The Rabbanan created a mitzvah of lighting candles. We light neirot for Shmini Atzeret. The lady lights the candles. That also is a fulfillment of the kavod, of the honor. The commentators point out, the Mishnah mentioned Simcha, and the Gemara and the Gemara elaborates, including Simcha is kavod. Okay, so that's the Mishnah. So the Gemara wants to know minahani milei. How do we know this halacha? That it's the 8th day. There's an obligation of Simcha. And Rashi explains the Gemara's question is that Torah says, it talks about it says, make the holiday of Sukkot. It says, make the holiday of Sukkot, which the holiday of Sukkot, as you know, is a 7-day holiday. And right after the Torah says, right nearby, it says, V'samachta b'chagecha, very famous, right? V'samachta b'chagecha, right? Everyone knows that song, right? Mark, good morning.
Morning, Rabbi.
Well, you should rejoice on the holiday. So the rejoicing on the holiday is connected to the 7 days of Sukkot. So therefore, there's a mitzvah to rejoice, to have Simcha. And we know in the time of the Mikdash, one of the main ways of the fulfillment of Simcha was by eating the shlamim. Because the Torah connects, there's also a drasha that connects Simcha to eating of the korban. But how do where is the source that the 8th day which is not the holiday of Sukkot. The eighth day, it's its own holiday. How do we know that you are obligated? There's a mitzvah, there's an obligation of Succah, which would mean you would have that obligation of having the korban shlamim. So the Gemara says, what's the source for the law? Meaning, as you know, the Mishnah generally states the law. The Gemara goes ahead and elaborates on what's the source of the law and details of the law. So that's what the Gemara is doing here. This is classic Gemara on Menahani Mile. Many Gemaras open up with that type of statement. Menahani Mile, Minayin, how do we know? What's the source for this law? So the Gemara says, the Tana Rabbana, we have a Braita. The rabbis taught. It says, Vayita ach sameach. The pasuk, after the pasuk tells us the idea of rejoicing in the holiday of Sukkot, it mentions over there in conjunction in that subject, Vayita ach sameach. You should be very happy, but you already told me you should be happy on the Chag. Right, Adam? If you tell me you got to be happy once, why do you got to tell me you have to be happy twice? Right? The Torah does not need to go ahead and repeat itself. You know, this week's parsha is Parshas Kedoshim. So the Torah talks twice about Shabbat. So then you have to ask the question, you know, the Torah maybe talks 12 times about the mitzvah of Shabbat. So you have to know, why is the Torah constantly talking about Shabbat? So obviously, so one of the Rabbeinu Bachaye says, just like Avodah Zarah, the Torah warns you so many times about Avodah Zarah, it's key to the whole Torah. So Shabbat is also key to the whole Torah. So therefore, it keeps on repeating and reminding about the importance of Shabbat, right? But that's that you can understand that when it comes to Shabbat, right? But why does it? Every time the Torah tells you a law, Torah has to repeat the same law. It doesn't repeat it. If it's repeating it, it's only to tell you something new, something novel. That's your general. You have to ask why is repeating yourself? Human beings repeat themselves. But the Torah, anytime the Torah doesn't write any extra, it's not one extra letter, right, David? Right, Mark? It's not extra in letter. So what is the? And if you want to send to the group that want, thank you very much. So what is the idea of this extra verse or extra words? Vayita ach sameach. What is the point of that pasuk? So the Gemara says that pasuk is coming to teach us Shmini Atzeret. This pasuk Vayita ach sameach is teaching us Lerabot Leilei Yom Tov Hachron. The night of Shmini Atzeret, that there's a mitzvah for you to eat from the korban shlamim. That there's a mitzvah for you to eat from the korban shlamim the night of Shmini Atzeret, which would mean that on the afternoon of Hoshana Rabbah, the afternoon of the seventh day of Sukkot, you would go, or that day, maybe not the afternoon, that day, you slaughter the shlamim, and you eat it, and you can eat it, and you will eat it the night of Shmini Atzeret. Enjoy the good meat. We're into meat for the holidays, by the way, and all the vegetarians are gonna have to be careful. You know, are gonna have to be, those during the Beit HaMikdash, they're gonna have to, change their style for the holidays because they're gonna have the mitzvah of having from the korban. Look, whether it's the korban Pesach on the right. You have to eat the meat to enjoy yourself. So the Gemara says that Vayita Sameach is teaching us the law that on the night of Shmini Atzeret, you have to go ahead and eat from the korban shlamim. So the Gemara says, how do you know that it's coming to include the night of Shmini Atzeret? Maybe it's coming to include the first night of Sukkot. What does that mean? The question is, on Sukkot, we know the slaughtering of the korbanot in general, all slaughtering of korbanot are by daytime, not by night. You can eat the korban at night, right? But you don't, like the Pesach, we eat at night, but you do not slaughter by night. So the Torah says, I want you to be happy on the holiday of Sukkot, right? to be happy on the holiday of Sukkot. So, what about the first night of Sukkot? Do you need to slaughter the animal Erev Sukkot, the afternoon or the day before Sukkot? If let's say Sukkot will be tonight, do I need to slaughter the korban today and eat from it tonight, my first meal of the holiday, to have from the meat of the korban? Or can I wait till tomorrow to slaughter and have it for lunch? You hear the question, David? Do I have to have it for dinner or not? So the Gemara is going to say, the Gemara says, no, it's coming to include the night I have to have dinner, Shmini Atzeret, with the korban, but I do not have to have dinner with the korban the first night of Sukkot. And the Gemara says, how do you know? This pasuk says, you shall be happy, which is extra. And you're telling me it's come to include, to add on, that the night of Shmini Atzeret, you have to be happy. You have to have the korban. Maybe it's coming to include the first night of the holiday. Maybe it's coming to include the first night of Sukkot, that you have to go ahead and eat and enjoy the shlamim, or the shalmei simcha, the korban, have dinner. The first meal of the holiday, maybe you have to have it with the korban. So that's the Gemara's question. If you have something that can go either way, what's compelling? What compelled to say that you have to have the korban, the eating of the korban for the night of Shmini Atzeret, and you did not tell me you need to eat the korban for the first night of Sukkot? Okay, is that interesting? That's the Gemara's question. So the Gemara says, "Eina ela Yom Tov Harishon." Maybe it's referring to the first night of the holiday. So the Gemara says, "Kishu omer ach." It says ach. The word ach, but. The word ach, cholak. It's like only, like ach is like but here. Vayisa, but only here. Here you should be happy. Here, this night you should be happy, but not some other night. Meaning the obligation of rejoicing, God bless you, the obligation of rejoicing is for this night, but not a different night. Meaning to say the night of Shmini Atzeret, but not the first night of what? Of Sukkot. The word ach, there's certain words that indicate a limitation, a restriction, a specification, means specific. By saying the word v'hisa ach, but here and not somewhere else. That is what the Gemara says. But then the Gemara asked the question again, back to the drawing board. Okay, it's coming to exclude, but how do you know it's excluding the first night of the holiday that you're not required to have the meat? Maybe it's excluding Shmini Atzeret that you don't need to have. Ma ra'ita l'rabot leilei Yom Tov ha'achron. What is compelling you to say it's coming to include the last night of the holiday? That you're saying the Hayita Ach Sameach, the pasuk of rejoicing is going on the last night of holiday. Good morning, Mark. Ulotzi Yom Tov Harishon, and it's coming to exclude the first night. Maybe it's coming to include the first night for happiness and excluding the last night. So the Gemara says, "Ma'aba meraba ani leilei Yom Tov Achron." It's more logical to include the Shmini Atzeret more than the first night of Sukkot. We are on 48a. 48a. We're now up to 48a2. The Gemara says it's more logical to include. We're at 48a2. Yeah, because it's a small. Yeah, we're picking up the pace a little bit. So, yeah. So the Gemara says, I'm coming to include why? Because if you look at the holiday, the first night of Sukkot, there is no simcha before the first night. The first night of Sukkot begins the holiday. Shmini Atzeret, there's simcha beforehand. We're in the simcha mode. We've been doing simcha every day. So the Gemara says, being that's the case, it's more logical that we're coming to continue the Simcha, and you would have the responsibility to have the Simcha, the continuous Simcha, 7 days, and then immediately in the eighth day, the dinner of the eighth day, in contrast to the first night of Sukkot, which was no, there was no Simcha, there was no, it didn't, wasn't, there was no Simcha that preceded, there was no happiness, obligation of happiness that was before the first night of Sukkot. So the Gemara said, "Maraban shelafanav sheyesh simcha lefanav." The morning Mars, it has simcha, it has happiness beforehand. Shmini Atzeret has happiness on Hoshana Rabbah. You have a mitzvah of being rejoicing on Hoshana Rabbah. And they exclude the first night of Sukkot, she'ein simcha lefanav. There was no happiness, there was no obligation of happiness before the first night of Sukkot, because there's no holiday before Sukkot. It's just a regular weekday. Okay. Now, so the Gemara says the following: the Mishnah. At the beginning of the parak, we said that Sukkah is Shiva. There's the holiday of Sukkot is for 7 days. That's the holiday of Sukkot, right? In the land of Israel, it's a 7-day deal. You're in the Sukkah for 7 days. Ketzad. So the Gemara wants to say, how do you go ahead and what do you do how do you act on the 7th day, the last day of the holiday? You told me the Sukkah is only for 7 days. Now, do you take apart the Sukkah on the 7th day? So let's see what the Mishnah says. No, you don't take apart the Sukkah on the 7th day. What does the Mishnah say? Gomar melecho. When you finish your last meal on Hoshana Rabbah, okay, we're in the land of Israel. We finished our last meal, and let's say we had our meal at 1 o'clock or whatever it was, 12 o'clock. And you had your meal, and now you finished. You're not having any more meals. The next meal you're having is the night of Shmini Atzeret. That's your next meal. You had your lunch. So what do you do? What do you do with your sukkah? Lo yatir. Don't take apart your sukkah. What do you mean, Rabbi? Finished eating. And listen, there's other things to do in a sukkah besides eating. You learn in a sukkah. You hang out in a sukkah. That's supposed to be your dwelling. And what about if someone else comes and needs a meal, or you decide you change your mind, you want to eat more? You need to have. You still need that sukkah to be available. Lo yatir sukkoto. Don't take apart. You have the walls. You tie the walls together. The schach. Don't take it apart. Now, so what do you do? Of a morid, but let's say, you know what? The holiday is coming of Shmini Atzeret. Shmini Atzeret, I'm going to be in the house. And I need to, and my utensils, I brought all my nice utensils to the sukkah, right? The sukkah is not supposed to be a place that you just, low class, you're supposed to have nice silverware in the sukkah. You treat the sukkah like your house. That's what it's supposed to be. The sukkah is supposed to be your house for those 7 days. And it's honorable for the Yom Tov that I'm already preparing for the Yom Tov. The holiday is coming. We're going to wait to take all my utensils out, wait to the night of Shmini Atzeret, then get busy. But it's the honor of the holiday of Shmini Atzeret is to start preparing for the holiday. So what do I do? So later in the afternoon, the Gemara says from Min HaMincha al Maila, which is like around 9 hours in the day, in a 12-hour day, if the day starts at 6 a.m. and ends at 6 p.m., that type of day, Min HaMincha could refer to 9.5 hours or 9 hours, 3 o'clock or 3:30 in the afternoon. You should go ahead. They put down Mincha Gadana, 3:30 in the afternoon. Let's say about 2.5 hours before sunset. Around that time, you could take the stuff already out of sukkah. When you're keeping the sukkah intact, meaning you're just removing utensils. You didn't ruin the sukkah. All right. So you take the utensils out from the sukkah, your mats. Oh, very good. So here it doesn't mean praying mincha. It's referring to a specific mincha time. Meaning there is something called mincha. But it's still it wouldn't even if you do early mincha, it wouldn't affect this. It's just that when it says mincha, it's a time, it's a specific time. There's something called mincha gedolah and mincha ketana. There's certain times of the day that's referred to regarding mincha times. This is referring to the mincha ketana, referring to the three. What do you say? But there's two times for mincha. There's the mincha. There's like we make like a 12:30 or 1:30 mincha, and that's mincha gedolah. Then there's the mincha ketana. They're talking about mincha ketana, exactly. Talking about the later mincha, and it's around 9.5 hours into the day. And they go ahead and now you go ahead and bring in utensils. Now, mibnei kavod yom tov achma shel chag. Why are you bringing utensils later in the afternoon? Because that's the honor that you show to the holiday. You start preparing for the holiday before the holiday itself. So that's what the Mishnah states. What do you do on the seventh day of Sukkot? Okay. Oh, very good. They say take down because the Sukkot in Israel were on the roofs. Some say they would be on even today in Israel. A lot of the sukkahs on the roof. Remember, in the old days, the roof was a very multi-purpose area. They would put their fruits on the roof to dry out. It's a whole area, whole space. In New York, Manhattan, you use the rooftops. It's a big business real estate thing. Boom. So they use the roof for drying out their fruits. And they also use the roof for sukkah. So now that's why it says they go down. They take down. Yes, Ralph. Right. The Gemara now Ralph is already ahead of us. So Ralph is he said we're going to talk about what happens if you don't have now that makes sense. You're going to bring your stuff to your house. What happens if you don't have room in your house? And now you're having a lot of people over, or whatever, you don't have room in your house. Here, Morris, the question, what do you do? Now, there is a concern. What's the issue? The Torah says, Lo Yosef. The Torah says, don't add on. You're not supposed to change the mitzvah by adding on to a mitzvah. The Torah says 7 days in a sukkah. If a person would intend to live in a sukkah for 8 days, for 9 days, he's violating the Torah. So even if the appearance of that is also a problem. Let's say David, our in-house Kohen, right, David? David gives 3 brachot to the Jewish people every day. Yivarech Hashem v'yishmerecha, Yah Hashem panav elecha v'choneka, Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem l'cha shalom. If David wants to add another bracha, he can't do it. Meaning, when he's up there doing the birkat as the Kohen, you can't add to the 3. And he has a nice pasuk from his bar mitzvah parsha. He can't add it to the birkat kohanim. If he wants to remove one, that's called bal tosif. You can't add. So right. So to violate would be if you intended to add, to add to the mitzvah. So here we're gonna get to we'll look at it inside the Gemara when we get to this point. Ein lo kelim lohorid mahu. The people in the yeshiva asked the question on the Mishnah. The Mishnah stated you're supposed to take out your utensils. You take your utensils in the afternoon of the 7th day of Sukkot. What about if you have no utensils to take out? So the Gemara shoots back. What do you mean you have no utensils? What did you do all the whole what did you eat with the whole 7th? What do you maybe you use plasticware? No, maybe you have nothing to take out. But you have mats and different beddings. You slept in the sukkah. You have things to take out of the sukkah. Ein lo kelim lorid ela ki yishtamish v'ma yishtamish. The Gemara says, what do you use the whole 7 days? So the Gemara says, ela ein lo mokum lohoris kelav. I have no, like Ralph was saying, I have no other place to eat on Shmini Atzeret but the sukkah. What do I go ahead, Mahu? What do I do to show? I need to show that I don't want to add on to the mitzvah. right? I have a situation. If I go ahead and leave the sukkah as is, right, and I'm going to go into the sukkah on Shmini Atzeret, and I'm going to eat there, it has an appearance. It looks like I'm adding to the mitzvah, even though I might not be violating because I'm intending. So I might not violate on a Torah level, but on a rabbinic level, marit ayin. Maybe it's maybe it looks like it has an marit ayin. It looks like I'm adding to the mitzvah. So what should I do to allow me to sit in the sukkah? Rav Chia Amar, Rav Chia says what I should do is pochet arba. I go ahead. I'll remove 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim of schach. I made a big space in the sukkah, let's say 16, and therefore that will close that. If let's say I go ahead and I run an empty space along the whole sukkah. Right, because it's still in a place, but I have no place to put my utensils. I need to eat in the sukkah. But let's say for eating, let's say he has a lot of guests coming from Yom Tov, Shmini Atzeret. Let's say he has a lot of guests. He has no other place to eat. That could be a situation. So what do you do? So the first opinion says you go ahead and you right. This is right. He has no place. Right here we're saying right. Again, he had the Gemara. Right. He brought all the stuff from his house to the sukkah, and now he wants to bring it back into that house, but he has no room for it. Maybe a lot of guests came into his house. He has no place, and he needs this place. He needs the sukkah for eating purposes. He will not be able to move. So what does he do? So the first opinion is remove schach. If Yeshua ben Levi Omar madlik etaner, you go ahead and you light a candle in the sukkah. What does that do? So we're going to see, the Gemara is going to explain that in Sukkot, we said if you have a small sukkah, you have to light the candles outside the sukkah. You can't bring the candles in the sukkah because there's a concern of burning down the sukkah, and there's a concern of we have to look back at the Gemara earlier. There are different concerns if you're going to have a fire in the sukkah. So since you would not Sukkot, you're not allowed to have the fire in the sukkah, and so therefore, if you're gonna light the candle in the sukkah itself, so then everybody will see. So everybody will see that you're not sitting l'shem mitzvah. There's a certain concern for lighting, or we have to look. Well, yeah, see, obviously, it's not the reason of the fire. So obviously, there's some other reason we have to look back at why you should not have a fire in the sukkah, and therefore, in a small sukkah, and since there's a yeah, see, let's go back here. Let's go back at the Gemara. Let's take a look at the Gemara. Let's see the Gemara. What did the Gemara say about the fire in the sukkah? So the Gemara said, depends. If it's a large sukkah, you can have the fire in the sukkah, and if it's a small sukkah, you can. Now, what's the reason for it? So the Gemara itself did not explain it, and Yeah, so the Bach explains that if you take a kli cheres, which is made out of earthenware, clay, and those lamps, once they're used, they become disgusting, that type of lamp. And therefore, it's not appropriate for the sukkah. So therefore, it's not honorable for the sukkah. So therefore, it's a problem. But if it's such a small sukkah, everybody sees this earthenware utensil that was used, and it looks not nice. But in a big sukkah, it's not so noticeable. So that's his understanding, and therefore, according to that, if it's made from a different material, not earthenware material, which is not repulsive, you could leave that in the sukkah. So he's not worried about any fire. The Beis Yosef says that it's forbidden to bring a lamp because might make the sukkah on fire. But if that's the case, then Mark has a good point. So this Al Gemara will be a big question on that reason. Because if you're worried about the sukkah being on fire, so how could you allow it on Shmini on the eighth day? Leave the first reason was that the type of material that they used to use for a lamp was made out of earthenware, and when you lit such a thing after it went out or through the lighting of earthenware, it becomes it doesn't look nice. It's not a type of, the material is not made from nice material, the earthenware, and it's not respectful for the sukkah. So therefore, you have a responsibility to honor the sukkah, and it's not respectful for the sukkah, and therefore, that's why you have to have that outside the sukkah. Don't bring it in the sukkah. So on that reason, you could ask the same question. Maybe it's not respectful of Shmini Atzeret to have this in the sukkah also. That would also be a question on this. We're going to see maybe a third opinion. What's the issue? What's the concern of having the light in the sukkah? They say, look up another opinion for a third approach. Okay, so everybody's trying to explain what is the problem. At the same as Shmini Atzeret.
Not the same. It's no longer gorgeous place of holiness. It could be a tent out in the summertime. In other words, once it's not too cold, it's just another.
Right, but the only my only question is, but being that it's Shmini, you're saying, I mean, even though it's Shmini Atzeret, but you're saying this is what people used to light. So people, you would use this in their house. So it's not such an issue. Meaning, right, because it's not Sukkot anymore. Okay, so see, therefore, even though it's a hut, so therefore, even though it might not be so respectful, but you don't need that place. It's not that level of a sukkah that have to have that level of the kavod. Okay, we could bring it back that reason a little bit. So therefore, that's what you're going to do to show that it's not you're not treating it like a sukkah. How did you show you're not treating a Shmini Atzeret, the eighth day, by lighting this earthenware lamp and bringing the lamp in the sukkah? You wouldn't do this on Sukkot. Nobody does this on Sukkot, and you're doing it. Obviously, it's not sukkah. So therefore, you're avoiding the issue of making it appear like you're sitting in a sukkah. Everybody knows that's not where people sit in a sukkah. So therefore, that's another way you could address the situation when you need to use the sukkah on the eighth day, and you need to sit in the sukkah. And you don't want it to look like you're sitting in a sukkah, so that doesn't look like you're sitting in a sukkah. That's so two approaches. Either you remove a certain amount of schach, or you go ahead and you bring the money, Aaron. You bring the lamp into the sukkah. So the Gemara says, now we have two opinions. Are they arguing? A lot of times, if I say something different than you, and because I don't feel your approach is a good idea, because if I think your approach is a good idea, why do I have to say something different? Right? I could just say exactly what you said. Why? So the Gemara is saying, in this situation, there's two rabbis who offer two different possibilities. They're not arguing with each other. Why not? Because they're talking about two different situations. Velo pligi. They're not arguing. Halan v'halahu. One rabbi is talking to us, the people in Bavel. We're in the Babylonian, Bavel, in Babylonia. We in Bavel, we outside of Israel, exactly. Outside of Israel, we sit in the Sukkah also on Shmini Atzeret. Because we outside of Israel don't, they were having they didn't know if today is the seventh day of Sukkot or today is the eighth day of Sukkah. So therefore they had to sit in the Sukkah. If it's the seventh day, the holiday of Sukkot is 7 days, and you can't have a meal outside of Sukkah. So we, outside of Israel, that sat in the Sukkah for seventh on Shmini Atzeret, therefore we can't take apart the schach. Because if we take apart the schach, it's not a sukkah, and we need to sit in the sukkah. So what would we do? We will go ahead and bring in the what? Hello, Aaron. We would go ahead and bring in the candle, that earthenware candle, and that's the way we show that, because it might be Shmini Atzeret. So on the one hand, we're fulfilling sukkah, just in case it's the holiday of Sukkot, but we might at the same time be violating, adding to the mitzvah, because it might be the 8th day of sukkah. So it might be the 8th day. So how do we do it? We sit in the sukkah just in case it's the 7th day of Sukkot. But we put in the lamp just in case it's not sukkah. So we're not showing openly that we are adding to the holiday. It's outside of Israel. It's Israel. You remove the schach. Hello, inside Israel, you just move the schach. By the way, tomorrow maybe we'll say that's why some people have different customs on Sukkah Shmini Atzeret. There are certain communities that don't have a full meal in the Sukkah on Shmini Atzeret. We have the full meal in the Sukkah. They have kiddush, some cake, and they go home. They're concerned for this marit ayin of adding to the mitzvah. So that's how some Aruch HaShulchan explains why they go ahead and they don't want to have a full meal, but then it's showing as if they're eating like a regular day of Sukkot, and therefore it's like it looks like I'm adding to the mitzvah. They're concerned for that. So on the other hand, they have a little bit. They have some taken on the 8th day to outside of Israel. The 8th day, which was a question in the old days, was a question: is today day 7? We eat in the sukkah. We have full meals in the sukkah. We don't go to no. Right. So we have it's a 9-day holiday, but the sukkah after the 8th day, we go into the sukkah on Shmini Atzeret, but after we don't say the bracha leishiv sukkah, but we go into the sukkah and the Shmini Atzeret. 9 days. But Sukkah Torah says, but again, even though the holiday is a 9-day holiday, we sit in the sukkah for 8 days. But on the 8th day, where there are certain differences. But because there was exactly. Have a great day, everybody. Right, but we still keep the old customs. We keep the customs, and the customs, by the way, has kept the Jewish. We don't change. That's what people don't. Right, Meryl? It's so totally custom. Right? You know what the letters of Minhag backwards is? Gehenem. If we'll keep the customs, it says that will protect us from Gehenem. That's not my own. I saw Rabbi Vadios. I saw one of Yaakov Yosef say that about the letters of Minhag and Gehenem. I think it's open for interpretation. How do you want to interpret that? If you don't keep the minhag, chas v'shalom, it could be that. If you do keep the minhag, those prevent Gehenna. How do you like that, Mark? Oh, yeah, very good. Yeah. Thank you very much. You know,